Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
Picture this, a sunny Tuesday afternoon at Evergreen Nursing Home. The kind of place where time moves like honey and every story has been told 1,000 times. I was there volunteering, helping Mrs. Henderson with her crossword puzzle 7. Letters for Digital Phantom, if you can believe the irony. That's when she walked in, Rose Richardson. Even before I knew her name, I knew she was dangerous. Not in the obvious way, she wasn't carrying a weapon or flashing a badge. It was something in the way she moved, the way her eyes cataloged everything. In the room, like she was building a database in her head. Sharp suit, sharper gaze, and when she smiled at her grandmother, something in my chest did this little flip that had nothing to do with the bad coffee I'd been drinking. "You must be Mrs. Richardson's granddaughter," I said, standing up from the puzzle table. "She talks about you all the time." Her eyes met mine, and for a second, that professional mask slipped. Just a fraction. All good things, I hope. I handed her a cup of tea, and when our fingers brushed God, I sound like a romance novel, but I swear I felt electricity. The kind that makes your skin tingle and your brain go fuzzy around the edges. What I didn't know then was that Rose worked for Quantum Securities, one of the most elite cybersecurity firms in the country. What she didn't know was that I was the phantom, the hacker who'd been dancing through their systems for months, leaving traces just bold enough to taunt them. Funny how the universe works, isn't it? That first coffee date, because yes, we had a coffee date 3 days later, should have been simple. 2 women, mutual attraction, maybe dinner, and see where things go. Instead, it felt like a chess match where neither of us knew we were playing. "So what do you do?" she asked, stirring her espresso with surgical precision. "Besides saving old ladies from crossword-induced frustration?" I laughed, trying to ignore how her lips curved around the cup rim. "IT consultant? Boring stuff, really. Database management, security audits, nothing that would interest someone like you. Someone like me? Smart, sophisticated, probably saves the world before breakfast." She smiled then, and it was like watching ice crack. "Somehow, I doubt your work is as boring as you claim, if she only knew." While she was sipping coffee and probably running background checks on me in her head, I was thinking about the Meridian Bank job I'd pulled off the week before. 13 million in misappropriated funds returned to the pension accounts they'd been stolen from. The bank still had no idea how I'd gotten past their firewalls. We talked for 2 hours. About books, about travel, about the way the light hit the cafe windows and turned everything golden. She was brilliant, the kind of brilliant that made me want to show off, which was dangerous for someone in my line of work. She asked careful questions, the kind that seemed casual but were anything but, and I found myself wanting to answer them honestly, which was even more dangerous. When she walked me to my car, her hand briefly touched the small of my back, and I nearly forgot every rule I'd ever made about keeping my personal and professional lives separate. "I'd like to see you again," she said. "I'd like that too." Neither of us was lying, exactly. But neither of us was telling the whole truth either. The next few weeks were a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. During the day, I'd hack my way through corporate systems, exposing corruption and redistributing wealth like some kind of digital Robin Hood. At night, I'd text with Rose, my fingers hesitating over the keyboard as I tried to figure out how much truth I could afford. "Still awake?" she'd message at midnight. Always. Insomnia is an occupational hazard. What kind of IT consultant works at midnight? The dedicated kind. Or the kind with something to hide. My blood would freeze every time she said things like that. Because Rose wasn't just smart, she was perceptive in the way that made me feel like she could see straight through me. And the worst part, I was starting to want her to. Meanwhile, Rose was playing her own game. I found out later that she'd been building a profile on the Phantom on me piece by piece. The breach at Meridian Bank had her attention. The pattern of my attacks, always targeting corrupt institutions, always returning stolen money to its rightful owners. She was fascinated by the psychology of it. What drives someone to be a white hat vigilante? She asked one evening over dinner. We were at this little Italian place, candles flickering between us, and she was twirling pasta around her fork like she had all the time in the world. Maybe they see injustice and can't ignore it, I said carefully, but why work outside the law? There are legal channels for exposing corruption, are there? When those channels are controlled by the same people perpetuating the corruption? Her eyes lit up the way they always did when I challenged her. So you support vigilantism? I support justice. However it comes. She reached across the table and touched my hand. You're not what I expected, Marina. What did you expect? Someone simpler? I laughed, but it came out shaky. Sorry, too. Disappoint. You haven't. That's the problem. That night, she came back to my apartment. We made love for the first time on my couch, rain pattering against the windows, her hands mapping every inch of my skin like she was memorizing me. When she whispered my name against my throat, I nearly told her everything. Nearly. The beginning of the end came on a Thursday. I was working on exposing a pharmaceutical company that had been price gouging insulin, my fingers flying over the keyboard in that zone where code flowed like music. My phone buzzed Rose, asking if I wanted to grab lunch. Can't today. Big project. The dedicated IT consultant strikes again. What's the project? Database migration. Thrilling stuff. I'm sure. But something in her text felt different, cooler, more careful. I should have paid attention to that instinct, but I was so deep in the code, so close to cracking their encryption, that I ignored it. 3 days later, Rose came to my apartment unannounced. I was in my home office, 6 monitors glowing around me like electronic angels, when I heard her key in the lock. Yes, I'd given her a key. Yes, that was stupid. But love makes you do stupid things, Marina. She called. In here. I quickly minimized my screens, pulling up a harmless spreadsheet. You're early. She appeared in the doorway, and immediately I knew something was wrong. Her face was pale, her hands clenched at her sides. We need to talk. Okay. I swiveled in my chair to face her. What's wrong? She was quiet for a long moment, studying me like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. I know who you are. My heart stopped. Literally stopped, then started again at double speed. What do you mean? The Phantom. The pharmaceutical hack 3 days ago, I know it was you. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to keep my voice steady. Rose. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. Her voice cracked. Please don't lie to me anymore. The timing, the methods, the target selection, it all fits. You're brilliant, Marina, but you have tells, patterns, and I've been studying them for months. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. You've been studying them. It's my job. She took a shaky breath. I work for Quantum Securities. We were hired to catch the Phantom, to catch you. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Your job. At first, yes. But then, she stepped toward me, tears starting to form. God, Marina, I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. Love. The word tasted bitter. Is that what this was? An undercover operation? No. It started that way, I won't lie. But everything that happened between us, that was real. This is real. She gestured between us, her composure cracking completely. I love you. That's why I'm here, why I'm telling you this instead of just having you arrested. I stared at her, trying to process the magnitude of what she was saying. The woman I'd fallen in love with was the woman hunting me. The woman who'd shared my bed was the one paid to put me in prison. Was any of it real? I whispered. The coffee, dates, the dinners, the nights you held me, was any of it real? She was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. All of it. Every moment, every touch, every I love you. That was me, not the agent. That was Rose loving Marina, not the hunter stalking the prey. But you're still going to turn me in. She was quiet for so long, I thought she might not answer. Then, I don't know. I packed a bag that night. Not much, some clothes, my emergency cash, a laptop with enough encryption to buy me time. Rose sat on my bed, watching me move around the room like a ghost. Where will you go? She asked quietly. Does it matter? It matters to me. I stopped packing and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd fallen in love with was still there, underneath the betrayal and the lies. The way she talked. Her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way she bit her lower lip when she was thinking. The way she looked at me like I was worth fighting for, even now. Why are you here, Rose? Why didn't you just have your team kick down my door? She stood up, walking to my window. The city lights painted her face in blues and golds. Because I realized something tonight, when I was sitting in my office looking at all the evidence I'd gathered, preparing to make the call that would end your freedom forever. What did you realize? That you're not a criminal. You're exactly what you said you were, someone who sees injustice and can't ignore it. Every single hack, every target you chose, they were all corrupt. You never stole for personal gain, never hurt innocent people. You're a white hat in a black hat world. That doesn't make what I did legal. No, but it makes it right. She turned back to me, her eyes fierce with determination. What if I told you there was another way? What do you mean? Quantum Securities isn't just hunting hackers. They're covering up corporate crimes, protecting the same people you've been exposing. I've seen the files, Marina. Companies pay US millions to make their problems disappear, to discredit whistleblowers, to ensure their secrets stay buried. My heart started racing. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time for the hunter to become the hunted. What Rose did next changed everything. Instead of turning me in, she helped me disappear, but only temporarily. Together, we started building a case against Quantum Securities, documenting their corruption, gathering evidence of their cover-ups. It took 3 months, 3 months, of living in safe houses, of encrypted communications and paranoid security measures. 3 months of Rose risking her career, her freedom, her life for me, for us, for the idea that justice mattered more than job security. The night before we went public with everything, we made love in a hotel room overlooking the harbor. The city sparkled below us like fallen stars, and Rose traced patterns on my bare shoulder with her fingertip. Are you scared? She whispered. Terrified, I admitted. You? Same. We could still run, disappear completely. I have enough money saved to keep us comfortable for years. She tilted her head up to look at me. Is that what you want? I thought about it seriously. A life with Rose, hidden from the world but safe. No more hacking, no more crusades for justice, no more looking over my shoulder. Just us. No, I said finally, I want to fight. But I want to fight with you. She smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise, then let's burn it all down. The expose hit like a digital earthquake. Terabytes of data, years of corruption, dozens of powerful people suddenly scrambling to cover their tracks. Quantum Securities went from elite cybersecurity firm to criminal organization overnight. Rose and I testified before Congress, appeared on news shows, gave interviews to journalists from around the world. The woman who'd hunted me became my partner in every sense of the word, personal and professional. We started our own firm, Richardson Softest digital justice, ethical hacking, corporate whistleblowing, exposing the kind of corruption that traditional law enforcement couldn't or wouldn't touch. We were good at it, better than good. We understood both sides of the game, knew how the hunters and the hunted thought, but the best part wasn't the work. The best part was coming home to someone who knew all my secrets and loved me anyway. Someone who'd given up everything to stand with me in the light instead of hunting me in the shadows. 1 year after the expose, Rose took me to dinner at that same Italian restaurant where we'd first talked about vigilante justice. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her wine glass, asking if I liked my pasta twice in 5 minutes. "Are you okay?" I asked. "You're acting weird." "I'm fine. Great. Perfect, actually. Rose." She took a deep breath, reached into her jacket pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped again. "Marina Santos," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "A year ago, I was hunting you. Tonight, I can't imagine a life without you." She slid out of her chair and onto one knee, right there in the middle of the restaurant. Other diners started to notice. Phones came out, but I only had eyes for her. "You're brilliant. You're beautiful. You're brave enough to fight for justice, even when it costs you everything. You've made me a better person, a better woman, a better partner in every way that matters." She opened the box, revealing a ring that caught the candlelight like trapped fire. "Marry me. Be my partner in crime, legal crime. Let's break every rule together as long as they're the right rules to break." I was crying ugly, happy tears that made my mascara run and my nose stuffy. But I was also laughing because only Rose would propose with a reference to criminal activity. "Yes," I managed. "Yes, yes, obviously yes." The restaurant erupted in applause as she slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. Our wedding was small, just family, close friends, and Mrs. Richardson, who insisted on giving a speech about how she'd known from the moment she saw us together that we were meant for each other. Grandmothers, it turns out, have excellent instincts about love. The honeymoon was a working trip to Switzerland, where we exposed a pharmaceutical company that had been artificially inflating the prices of childhood vaccines. Not exactly romantic by most people's standards, but watching Rose's face light up as she cracked their encryption was better than any sunset. These days, our life has a rhythm to it. Coffee at dawn, synchronized on our laptops like deadly digital dancers. Lunch meetings with whistleblowers and journalists. Evenings when we come home exhausted and victorious, celebrating another small victory in the war for transparency. And yes, our bed is never empty for long. Rose still traces patterns on my skin while I fall asleep, and I still wake up sometimes amazed that this brilliant, dangerous, beautiful woman chose to love me instead of arrest me. When new clients ask why we're so good at what we do, Rose just smiles, that sharp smile that made me fall in love with her in the first place. "Because we know how the villains think," she says. And I grin right back, because even after all this time, I still love scandalizing people, and because we used to be them. Last night, Rose came home with that particular gleam in her eye that means she's found our next target. A defense contractor selling faulty armor to soldiers overseas. Child's play, really, but the kind of challenge that makes my fingers itch for the keyboard. "How long do you think it'll take us?" she asked, pulling up their financial records on her laptop. I studied their security architecture, noting the obvious vulnerabilities and the not-so-obvious ones. 3 days. Maybe 4 if they've upgraded their firewalls recently. Want to make it interesting? When do I not? She leaned over and kissed me, slow and promising. Winter Picks, where we go for our anniversary trip. I laughed against her lips. You're on. As I write this, Rose is asleep next to me, her laptop still humming on her chest, code reflecting on her face like electronic dreams. Tomorrow, we'll wake up and hunt down another corrupt corporation, expose another cover-up, return another pile of stolen money to its rightful owners. It's a good life. Not the one I planned when I first started hacking into corporate systems. 5 years ago, better, because the best stories aren't about the criminals or the cops, the hunters or the hunted. They're about what happens when two people find each other across the divide and decide that love is worth changing sides for. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, love is worth changing the world for too.